Torchlight Infinite has had its most exciting season reveal yet, and could be moving into the best season ever with City of Aeterna. First up, and the thing that I'm personally most excited about, is a brand new game mode. This is the first new game mode that Torchlight Infinite has ever gotten, and I can't wait to play, especially since it's been inspired by several things like board games and roguelikes, which I also enjoy. We've also got two new things. In terms of heroes, both a new character, Iris, who's basically a Pokemaster, and Gemma's third hero trait is finally here. This one is fire themed, so it's going to be pretty hot. There's also been a full crafting system overhaul to fix most of the problems that players had in the previous season, and an overhaul to the Endgame Netherrealm progression, with the goal of giving players more progression options. So instead of your progression going time mark 7 and then up time mark 8, massive power jump, instead now it's going to be much steadier. You'll go from 7 to like 7.2 to 7.5 to 8, 8. Etc. I'll get into it a little more later in the video. Furthermore, there are also new deterministic ways to find legendary items, which means that a lot of your favorite items, which you might not have been able to obtain, are easier to get. All this, plus balance changes and much, much more coming soon, so stay tuned because this is a big one and you don't want to miss it. So let's get into the part you probably most want to hear about, Iris the Pokemaster. She is a spirit magi focused character who's able to equip them as active skills. This is a perfect way to showcase the revamped spirit magi, who level up using the growth stat when within a map, becoming more powerful and gaining massive AoE abilities, especially as they unlock their ultimate effects. In the past, you'd get away with treating your minions as expendable. If they died, you'd just summon new ones, but spirit magi look to be different. You'll want to nurture their growth and keep them alive so they get to decimate your foes. You can obtain Forsaken Iris Growing Breeze from the Battle Pass. She is part of a paid track, however she unlocks when you purchase it immediately, no need to grind. And if they're too far away from your foes to start the smackdown, don't worry, they get a movement speed bonus too. This way, using Iris should make minions feel far more fluid than they have in the past, while also making your spirit magi more powerful, able to take on the toughest bosses Leptis has to offer. Before, when you played minions, you were stuck to the minion part of a skill tree. Now, the patch notes have revealed there are a lot of optimizations to include minions in a variety of different ways. So, if you want a more diverse minion build, maybe focusing on fire damage, lightning damage, or even cold, there are options for it, leading to greater build diversity. Then next up, we have Frostfire Gemma Flames of Pleasure, who is all about firepower and creating massive purgatory zones, which deal damage to everything in their radius while debuffing enemies. These purgatories can brand enemies within them, causing them to take increased fire damage, and a percentage of the damage they take is recorded. When the branded enemy dies, then something happens. There could be a little bit of an explosion, a new enemy could be branded, or much, much more. You can also enhance your purgatory effect to trigger death by fire, the best kind of death, removing life from enemies within an area in a manner similar to Reap Purification. This is based on what their brand has recorded. Now, this recorded damage is cleared afterwards, but there are ways to prevent or reduce that effect. You can purchase Gemma Flames of Pleasure with 100 hero emblems or 980 Primo Crysts, which is $15 in the shop. And I think I just found my league starter, because Gemma is looking great and I've wanted to play some fire builds for a little bit now. The nice thing here is Purgatory seems pretty general purpose, meaning you can apply it to minions, you damage over time. At least it looks like it will benefit from a lot of the same things as damage over time, and you can definitely apply it to hit-based fire spells. Not sure if it'll work with Reap Purification, as Reap Purification is pretty weird, but overall I'm pretty excited to try Flames of Pleasure and look forward to the crazy new builds these enable. I think if you want a nice stable farmer, I'd recommend Iris, though of course if there's a previous character you've been looking at, a lot of them will be good too. Several characters have received balance adjustments. Bing and Thea Incarnation of the Gods have had their power lowered to be more in line with the other heroes, while underperforming hero traits like Yoga's Spacetime Elapse and Karino's Ranger of Glory have indeed been buffed. Hopefully what this means is I'll no longer have to tell people, well, if you want to play a Ranger build, play anything but Ranger of Glory. And I have a pretty high confidence that Ranger of Glory is good now, because Yoga Spacetime Illusion was by far the worst character in the game in Season 2, and with the buffs in Season 3, he was pretty darn solid. Maybe not the single strongest, definitely outshone by Thea, but very good, respectable, and something you could absolutely have fun with. Plus, he got a few buffs. Now his clone not only reacts more appropriately to Spell Burst, but also generally has better quality of life and scaling options from main skill levels. So if you are looking to play something new, there are more options than there ever were. Next up, let's do a deep dive on City of Aeterna. It kind of reminds me of two mechanics from Path of Exile's past, Synthesis with Delve. You start off by finding the Obelisk of Aeterna in your maps. This is a very small fight, similar to what we've seen from previous seasonal mechanics. However, After you complete that, you'll essentially get tablets, which I suppose is a little bit like Path of Exile's Lake of Calandra. Collect these tablets, and you'll be able to build up your city map, exploring it for epic loot. Place each tile down carefully, because you want to maximize the rewards, but also keep in mind, the more rewards you choose, the more dangerous the boss will be, the Lone King, who stands at the end, barring your exit from progressing deeper into the city. Be sure to light Candelabrum to illuminate your way through the fog, thus maximizing your rewards. And should you do so, you'll be able to get exclusive soul candles. These are a new character progression system that can be merged and kind of bred together to create mutant or hybrid effects, some of which do have downsides, so use with caution, but it should add a fair bit of character power, while also giving you more diverse character customization. And more build diversity is always good in my opinion. You'll also be able to collect pages throughout your journey to customize your psalms of the city, unlocking further rewards. This is a somewhat familiar looking skill web that you get to progress over the course of a season, and eventually, if you progress it enough, you'll unlock the infinite mode for City of Aeterna. Now, this adds two very important things to Torchlight Infinite. First of all, an alternate content type. Before, you had Path of the Brave and Netherrealm, and that was it. Now you have Path of the Brave, Netherrealm, and City of Aeterna, which is much needed. More diversity is good, and that way, when you're bored of one thing, you can move on to doing something else. And with this, Torchlight is truly infinite, adding more challenge for people who have, or at least think they have, the strongest builds. How far can you go in Infinite, and will there be a leaderboard? I certainly hope so. Now, I'm a big fan of roguelike games, so I definitely see a lot of roguelike inspiration in the way the City of Aeterna is laid out. You get to choose your path that should be a little different each time, and there's that innate element of replayability. Is it going to be full random? Well, no, because you still choose your character and you bring that in. You'll have to pick your build accordingly, but if you do, the rewards are going to feel very different. There's a new game mode. I'm really excited for that. It's something that I've wanted to see come to Torchlight Infinite ever since Season 1. I'm glad it's finally here, and hopefully it's the first of many. Now, speaking of new or reworked systems, there was also a crafting revamp. The Cube of Rapacity season added prototype and targeted processing, replacing the old crafting system. And this didn't quite hit the mark. So there's a few important changes coming in Season 4. The first of which is, you can still lock 1 or 2 modifiers when prototype crafting, but prototype crafting adds 3 random mods every time. So, if you lock 1 modifier, you'll end up with a 4 mod item, and if you lock 2, you'll end up with a 5 mod item. Furthermore, using targeted processing no longer removes all of the item's plasticity. Instead, plasticity can be used for a variety of effects, including upgrading an item's tier. So let's say you get a T5 mod of exactly what you want, you can spend currency to upgrade that. And you can even upgrade that all the way to tier 0, unlocking extremely powerful, game-breaking modifiers. However, this is where your plasticity will be set to 0. And when you upgrade a modifier to tier 0, it also removes a mod from the item, so do this with caution because you really can't go back. But once you've prototype crafted something that you're happy with, don't worry, you don't have to span through and use up all the plasticity, you move on to targeted processing that adds exactly the mod you want, though do be aware, in the case of certain rare and powerful modifiers, it may have a chance to fail, like when trying to add +2 spell skill levels. The tier added is random, so you can still get junk and you'll need to craft multiple times to get exactly the finished item. However, this is a far less random and far more controlled process to use and finish your items. Plus, if you're unhappy after this stage, you can always go back to prototype crafting, because targeted processing no longer sets an item's plasticity to 0, meaning you'll get a lot more bang for your buck out of a base. XD also mentioned that you can even upgrade mods to tier 0 on an item with 0 plasticity, meaning you get to rip a bunch of stuff off. Just keep in mind that it is random and you can brick your item. Don't go too ham here. But the end result seems like a much more dynamic system that I'm very much looking forward to using. Another Torchlight Infinite crafting system, the Divinity Slates, have also gotten buffs. Now, when you fail to brand your nodes, A, they may mutate into another node of a similar rarity, or B, as you're successfully branding, they're more likely to upgrade into a rarer node. This way, you should get better slates overall, and if you don't like what it changed into, don't worry about it, you can always revert just like you've always been able to. And this addresses one big problem that I had personally when working with the Divinity Slate system. I'd buy 5 or 6 Divinity Slates and then burn through all of them without hitting what I wanted. There were just too many modifiers and it was way too random. Now having more options appear means more chances to get what you want, or more chances at least to get something that you're okay with, since perfect slates are still going to be difficult to craft. But crafting wasn't the only thing which got revamped. The Endgame and Netherrealm progression also got a huge facelift. First up, trait cards are permanent, and their bonuses have been adjusted in accordance, meaning probably slightly weaker, except you have it up all the time, rather than having all the best effects stacked later in your map. Furthermore, chaos cards are stronger, and you get dealt random chaos cards whenever you enter a stage, so you'll have the effect of all of your trait cards, all 10 in a deck. Decks are still important, which is good. It's a way to customize your endgame. Chaos cards are icing on the cake, and oh boy, that icing is looking very sweet. Furthermore, some problematic map modifiers have been removed, so your phones probably won't be melting anymore. And compasses have completely changed. They act much more like Path of Exile's map device, where you can buy them from the shop for a fixed price, and they apply additional content to your maps. This way, you don't ever have to worry about someone buying all the compasses and the price going up through the roof and your farming strategy going through the floor. In this revamp, XD also paid special attention to the basic mechanics like the 6 gods, making the rewards better at a baseline and far more consistent as a result. So overall, your loot should feel much better just as a result of this. Except it gets even better, because they've also changed how the Nether Realm itself progresses. Before you went to Time Mark 7 and then activated Space-Time Turbulence, and that was it. The only increase in difficulty at that point was adding compasses for more bonuses. However, now, Time Mark 7 and Time Mark 8, the new official name of Space-Time Turbulence, we did it guys, have submarks. If the time marks themselves are hours on a clock, these are your minutes on a clock, and they represent the previous difficulty and loot that you could get from adding generic compasses to your map, things like more monsters. If you opt into these marks, you will need a better build, and it is going to be much more difficult. However, in exchange, what that means is you'll get better rewards. This way, players shouldn't really hit that hard wall as much. You'll get to Time Mark 7, and you should be able to progress through Time Mark 7 into Time Mark 8, and then through Time Mark 8 into Deep Space, the most difficult version of content available in Torchlight Infinite, at least if you don't count the Infinite City. And so I'm a big fan of these changes, and I think they're going to make the game and the overall Netherrealm progression feel much smoother, addressing a longtime player concern. Another player concern that's being addressed is defenses. Energy Shield was already pretty good, but Armor and Evasion were only really used when you were scaling them for damage. So there's been a rebalance to defenses, including easier access to Armor and Evasion on legendaries, more block, and the new deflection stat. Armor also now applies to non-physical damage at 60% of its effect, but this can be enhanced through crafting. You might get an affix on your item, which says, hey, armor now applies to even more non-physical damage, because if you're an armor stacker, that's going to feel really good. Armor's also had its effect normalized, rather than being proportional to the incoming hit, because before, armor was really good at mitigating small hits and poor at mitigating big hits, so you needed to pair it with something like Injury Buffer or Fizz Taken As. Now, armor should be able to stand alone as a pretty well-rounded defense, just be aware that, as far as I can understand, dot damage does still bypass it. And Evasion has also got a facelift, because it now applies to spells with 40% less effect. So you won't be evading all the bosses like your Neo from the Matrix, but you will be evading them a lot more than you used to. And this next part's something I really want to call out and take special notice of, because it does something much better than any other ARPG on the market that I've seen, and that is the deflection stat. A buff to compensate for the fact that evasion has no inherent mitigation, leading to players randomly getting hit by huge spikes of damage, which feels bad because you feel like you died out of nowhere. Deflection reduces your damage taken when hit, but this consumes all the deflection stacks, and you gain deflection when evading. Therefore, you want to have high enough evade that you're constantly stacking deflection up and taking those infrequent hits. In practice, this should work really well and feel absolutely amazing. As one last part of the balance adjustments around defenses, trigger skills can now only be linked to one active skill, so no more 3 defensive skills on auto defense, but rhythm support allows you to trigger defensive skills in an active skill slot. So the automations there, there's just a higher opportunity cost, which is pretty fair. There are also 2 changes intended to curb excessive damage in Torchlight Infinite. The first is that whenever there's a buff or multiplier that provides additional damage, it is no longer self-multiplicative. In other words, if something gave 7% additional damage per stack of Tenacity Blessing and you had 4, it's not 1.07 to the 10, it's now 1.7. Not being self-multiplicative means that damage scaling won't go quite as crazy, and while this does hurt the top end of builds, the average player will not be affected. This is paired with a new reinstatement of the dummy cap, because it was found that in Season 3, players overly focused on their dummy DPS, and it's important to remember that that's not the only thing that defines a build. So the cap is now 100 billion, which should be enough for all the content in Torchlight Infinite. And the dummy even displays your survival. Now we just need to teach it how to hit people. And last up, one other major complaint that players had, especially in Season 3, was they couldn't get legendary items. After all, where does something drop and how do you farm it? Well, now farming will be much more reliable as XD has added blueprints. You can kind of think of these, similar to fluorescent memory cards, as fractions of legendary items. Therefore, they're much more common, and additionally, my understanding is you're going to be able to target farm them. Furthermore, many legendary items got reworked, with a lot of the worst legendaries in the game being removed entirely, so the overall drop pool will feel less cluttered and items will feel more impactful. If you're playing either an armor stacker or an evasion stacker, well, this might be the best time to do it ever. Blueprints are the thing that I know the least about currently. The reveal only teased some tantalizing details, but I very much look forward to seeing how this system, combined with a revamped Netherrealm, feels in practice. Overall, I think XD has done a really good job of addressing player concerns with Season 4 and the City of Aeterna, and I'm actually really excited to play the game. I didn't have that much fun in Season 3. The very random nature of the seasonal mechanic felt lackluster, and because I didn't have control, it wasn't too interesting to me. Whereas I'm super excited to explore the City of Aeterna, and I can't wait to make all sorts of crazy builds with the new legendary items. And one last note as I'm wrapping things up. I think a few too many people bought the Maid Erica skin, because we're now getting 2 swimsuit Ericas. Is there going to be a league where Erica isn't the most popular hero? Kind of doubting it at this rate. But if a cat girl in a bikini isn't really your thing, don't worry. We've also got a brand new Moto Ultimate skin and a brand new Iris Ultimate skin, both of which not only change the hero, but their minions as well. So if you wanted your Spirit Magi to look way cooler, then get the new Ultimate skin for Iris, and if you want your mechs to look even more mechanical, consider the Ultimate skin for Moto. And those are my thoughts on the biggest changes coming with City of Aeterna. Personally, I'm really excited for this, and I'd like to take a moment to give thanks to XD for sponsoring this video. I'm looking forward to the season, and if you have any questions, either leave them down in the description of this video, or in a recent community post, or go tweet at me over on Twitter, because I'm going to be doing a developer interview and Q&A with XD in the upcoming days, where I'm going to be gathering community questions and appearing alongside Maxwell's very own Milky BK, Pastron, and Crouching Tuna to help go over some of the community questions, concerns, and much more with the developers. One thing you can absolutely say about XD is they listen to player feedback. Players last season said, hey, we can't get any legendary items. Now you have new ways to get legendary items. Players said, hey, we want to do all these fun farming strategies with compasses, but we can't buy them because they're too expensive because other people bought them all. And now you don't have to worry about that. It's a fixed price, and that's a good Flame Elementium sink. That's going to take Flame Elementium out of the economy, effectively turning it into items, which are then traded to other players. That keeps the economy moving and makes things feel better. You have more ways to target farm legendary items, and player concerns around crafting have absolutely been addressed. The new changes should be the best of both worlds with a system, where you still have a choice. It's still exciting to make an item with a tier 0 mod, but your item can break. It's no longer click 10,000 times and you'll have your item. But it's also not help. I can't make anything I want because I bought every single base on the market and there's none left. Something that I personally ran into last season, and it was very demoralizing. So I think we have a best of both worlds here. Plus, with defenses being better, maybe everyone won't be going low life. There were some balance changes, then with balance changes come nerfs, but I think most people will agree that those do feel well deserved. And there's a lot of buffs to underperforming hero traits. Plus, with defenses the way they are, you should have a much better time surviving, and your defensive stats on gear will be more relevant. It's no longer stack ES and then worry about cheesing the rest with infinite defensive skills. So maybe you tried the Torchlight Infinite beta, and you've been wondering, should I come back? But the last couple seasons haven't really grabbed you. I think this is the best time ever to come back, because there's a new game mode, which is going to be super exciting. A lot of long-standing problems have been fixed, and you need to give the developers your feedback. Make sure it's constructive, but do share it. And if you want to know anything more immediately, then leave it down below. Now, in the upcoming days, I'm going to be making more City of Aeterna content. I might go over the patch notes, haven't decided yet. Usually when I go over patch notes, if they get really long, my brain melts, and these have been really long. But I'm definitely going to be talking about the new hero traits, the new systems, all that stuff that you want to know. Possibly a revamped and updated crafting guide again, since the system changed. Maybe even some advanced crafting tips, since that's definitely back on the table. Get subscribed so you don't miss any of that. Make sure to leave a like while you're down there, and I look forward to seeing what Season of Aeterna brings. Now I just want to take a moment to give a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for their continued support. If you want to see your name beside these fine folks, then just head down to the description. But that's all for me today. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the season reveal. Do be sure to check out the full thing below if you're interested, and I look forward to seeing you in City of Aeterna.